Hey folks, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com. Joining me as my co-host as always is Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org, and we're back here on Monday after another tough loss for Nebraska football, 34-3 on Saturday to the Michigan Wolverines. Not a lot of positive things to talk about it, but we're going to break it down, talk about the latest coaching rumors, Deion Sanders, Matt Rhule, everybody else, under the sun is being rumored and named. Everyone has a source of somebody that's going to be the next head coach. So we'll break down all the rumors. We'll even talk a little bit of Nebraska basketball here, and we'll try to talk through the hurt, you guys. So Danny, we'll start with you, man. It was a rough game, 34-3. It was kind of tough to make it through, but what were your, I guess, first impressions or reactions to the game on Saturday?
My first reaction to the game on Saturday is that I'm probably not going to watch the last two and instead spend time with my family and do some other productive things because, boy, that was a slog on Saturday. I thought the defense did well. It's hard to consistently play well throughout an entire game when your offense can't move the football. And, I thought they did well. I thought the defense played well. I mean, yes, the score was, 34-3?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they did give up big plays, but overall, I thought they hung in there, and they were put in some tough spots. I remember you tweeted that during the course of the game, and, the offense did the defense zero favors, and quite honestly, I think the stellar play of the defense is a tip of the cap again to Bill Busch. I mean, he's really kind of transformed this defensive unit ever since he's taken over the interim tag, so I thought the defense played well. I thought Ernest Hausman is a player to watch. He really has stepped up these past couple of games, and it's fun to see an in-state kid really make an impact. So I'll be curious to see what his future holds and how he factors into this defense. But other than that, I mean, the rest of it was disgusting. I was so bored. This was the first time I was really actually bored during a Nebraska game because it felt like the game just didn't move. The clock didn't move. Everything was slow. It went from daylight to nighttime while I was watching the game, and it was just another sad loss on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it really wasn't. I have to tip my cap to the defense because I do think that, yes, they gave up 264 rushing yards and they gave up over 400 yards of total offense, but only 412. And, really, I thought that they did enough to at least give Nebraska a chance to win. I mean, Blake Corum, who is a Heisman Trophy favorite, his longest run of the day was 12 yards on 28
carries. They did a great
carries.
job against him, yeah.
Yeah, and really, it was 17-3 in the third quarter before, McCarthy ran that one in, and then they got one early in the fourth quarter. But it's like, if Nebraska could have ever moved the ball or done, I mean, they didn't do really anything once Chuba went out of the game. And, he looked a little bit better to start. I mean, he can't throw the football very well. I don't know if he's hurt or if but he doesn't look right throwing the ball. I'm not sure what is exactly going on there, but I know him and Smothers have both battled injuries, so maybe that's an issue. I mean, Mark Whipple got knocked out on the sideline. It just was it was a microcosm of the entire season where it was like it just went from bad to worse, and just everything that could go wrong did, in a sense. But I agree with you on Ernest Hausman, though. He was my one big bright spot. Garrett Nelson, I thought, played really well.
Yeah, he did.
He had some injuries, and Hutchmacher, one of those guys, had a couple of sacks. I mean, there were tackles for loss. I mean, there were some bright spots.
I heard his name a couple times, and it's interesting. Not to interrupt you on your point here, but just really quickly, like, he was a guy that we ragged on at the beginning of the season, but I've been hearing his name called more and more throughout the last couple of weeks. So that's great to see. You want to see a player do really well, and he's adjusted to his role and really made an impact, I think.
Yeah, and I think you're right to give Bill Busch a lot of credit for this defense because it really is night and day from. I mean, you think about how Georgia Southern, I mean, think about them. They averaged almost like 9 yards a carry, 8 yards a carry. And you take this Michigan team who, they averaged 5.4 yards a carry, but this is the best offensive line in the country. And I thought Nebraska held up fairly well. I mean, yes, they kind of got bullied a little bit, but I mean, put the tape on of Penn State. I mean, Penn State gave up 418 yards to this team. So, I think it's just like we said the last couple of weeks against Minnesota and against Illinois. You can only put your defense out there for so long and put them in bad positions so much. I mean, I don't think they were across the 50 more than one or two times. And, they were under 200 total yards. And we were saying it just before we came on the air, but in the last 10 quarters, they've scored one touchdown since Casey Thompson's been out to injury. And I don't care what program you are. I mean, from the FCS to Division I, you've got to have more than one quarterback ready. And, it's maybe those, like I said, those guys, I know they're not 100%, but Nebraska does not have the quarterback depth that you need to, compete at this level. Because if it's Michigan State, Indiana, I don't care. I don't think there's any team in the Big Ten that would have had that same level of drop off from starter to backup. And that's definitely something that the new coaching staff is going to have to fix for sure.
And you look at the rushing in this game for Nebraska, Chuba Purdy was your leader, and that's a major problem. Anthony Grant had 11 carries for 22 yards. Ramir had 2 for 13. Cooper Jewett had 2 for 6, just running down really quickly. Gabe Irvin also had 2 for 6. I don't really remember Gabe being in there, to be honest with you. And then Logan Smothers, 4 carries for 1. But they needed to run the football a little bit more. It's exactly what Michigan did. And, look at some of the players, and, I heard this mentioned in a group chat, and I kind of watched the film back, and I totally agree. A guy like Arnold Barnes, that's the Big Ten running back that you want. Somebody low to the ground, somebody a little bit smaller, but that bulldozing type of running back. And, if Nebraska next year gets an offensive coordinator that actually wants to run the football, I mean, I do think, there is a blueprint being built in terms of recruiting for, running backs like we have seen in Chase Brown and Blake Corum. I'm not saying that these recruits are going to turn out like them, but those type of physical running backs are exactly what you need in this conference.
Yeah, Arnold Barnes, like I said, he reminds me just a little bit of Hassan Haskins. And sorry for I only have Michigan references, but I am a Michigan fan also. But he is a guy that, but if you look back at Hassan Haskins, he was barely recruited. He was ranked in the same area. He kind of has a similar size, and I just think that Arnold Barnes runs a lot like him, where he is quick, but he's got that decisiveness, that he's that one cut type of runner. So, I feel good about that commitment. And I think he's a guy that's definitely, going to outplay his ranking where he's ranked at right now, because I think he's ranked way too low for what his production is and his talent level this year. So, hopefully he'll be able to stick it out. It's going to be interesting. I know that the coaching rumors have gone crazy. People were talking about, flights to Charlotte and stops in Ohio. And one guy on the message board said that, he's been a Kansas fan, and this was on the Kansas site. And he said that he heard that Lance Leopold's got a deal signed, and another guy for the Kansas State head coach. So rumors are really flying. And I think, it's probably because, Nebraska is no longer bowl eligible. And I do think, it wouldn't shock me. I don't necessarily think a decision's coming this week. A lot of people have said that there's smoke about Matt Rhule being announced like in the next couple of days. I don't think that that's happening, but it wouldn't. The thing about it is, it would be better to have it done sooner for Nebraska for the recruiting sense, because however the contract gets worked out, whenever that new coach starts, he can start recruiting right now. And because I think at this point we all. I love Mickey Joseph. I think he's done a good job with this team. There's clearly a lot of issues that he didn't have the opportunity to address, but I just don't see him getting this job at this point. I don't know. Am I wrong on that? Well, what's your thought?
I don't think he's getting this job, but I don't think it's through any fault of his own. You need a coach that knows how to rebuild a program and quickly. And, I just don't think he is able to do that in the sense of being a head coach. That is a lot of responsibility. So I know I've said that, I would have liked Mickey Joseph as head coach, but as we play, games against Michigan and honestly probably against Wisconsin next Saturday, we're going to see where our depth really lacks. And, I hope he stays on staff in some capacity, but, I think this next head coach needs to be a proven rebuilder or recruiter, and, somebody that can help take this program not even to the next level this year, but somebody that can build a solid foundation so we can start getting that depth back. You see, programs obviously like Alabama or Ohio State or Michigan. First guy gets injured, they have a second guy ready to go, built, proven depth, and that's something that Nebraska needs. And we need a coach that can recruit and develop like that. And it's not Mickey's fault at all, but that's just, that's a lot to put on a guy who was just kind of thrust into this situation.
Yeah, I mean, it was maybe if Casey hadn't got hurt, the record could have been a little bit different. And I do think that he did a good job of rallying the troops. And I think that this opportunity long term is going to possibly help him get a head coaching job somewhere else. And I do hope that he stays at Nebraska as the associate head coach, and he can really help lead this recruiting operation, because I do think that's going to be needed. And he's got the ties to Louisiana, and the other thing is he has ties to the program. I mean, it is really, if you look at Michigan's staff, a lot of their guys, like probably 3/4 of the staff, actually played at Michigan through different eras. And I know that doesn't necessarily matter, but I do think that it is good in a sense I feel like it helps with recruiting, especially in the state of Nebraska. I think Mickey has really built up those relationships there, and it would be a bummer to see him leave. But if he gets a chance to be a head coach somewhere else, you can't blame him for that. But that's probably the only way I don't see him back, is if somebody else decides to take a shot on him, or because I don't really see Mickey as being like an offensive coordinator. I think he's a guy that's going to be an associate head coach and then just kind of work his way up to being a head coach. And I don't think that being a play caller is as big of a deal as it used to be. So I don't think that's going to hinder him. But I guess let's get into some of these rumors. I know the Deion Sanders rumor that kind of got shot down. Did you ever buy into Coach Prime coming to Lincoln?
No, but I would love it. I would absolutely love it. He's bold. He's not apologetic. He's got that swagger about him. That's exactly what this program needs. I mean, he can recruit. I mean, I would love it if he came here, honestly. But I suspect that he'll end up somewhere down south. But I didn't necessarily buy into it, but I did love the idea of him coming to coach at Nebraska. I mean, he would bring, energy at the very least back into the program, because as we saw on Saturday, and as I was falling asleep, there was no energy in the game on Saturday.
Well, and he's done a really great job at Jackson State. The defense is really good. I think they give up like 12 points a game. They won the SWAC championship last year, and they're one of the best teams in the FCS this year. And his son is Shakir Sanders is a really talented quarterback. They got the number 2 overall recruit in the entire 2022 class, Travis Hunter, flipped on signing day to Florida State, or from Florida State. So I thought maybe he was waiting to see if the FSG job was going to come open, but Mike Norvell's kind of flipped the script there. And so it's Auburn. I mean, Georgia Tech he's got some connections to Atlanta from his days at the Falcons and the Braves, but I don't see him really taking that job. So to me, it looks like Auburn would be a great fit for him, or Nebraska, but he's waiting for, Texas A&M to finally fire, Jimbo, because I mean, imagine Deion Sanders at Texas A&M or something like that. But, I don't necessarily think his denial to his team is anything, but he says, these are his own words, that he's honest to a fault, and that if he was talking to somebody, he wouldn't lie about it. So I don't know. We'll see, but it feels like the Matt Rhule thing seems more realistic to me, but again, I don't know if I really buy that either. I mean, I like Matt Rhule. I know a lot of people don't, but I think he would be a smart fit for this program. He knows how to, coach offensive line from his NFL background with the Giants. I think he's shown at Baylor and Temple, he can recruit. Al Golden helped build Temple, but Matt Rhule was part of that recruiting strategy that helped him get there. And I think he showed that in Texas too. He knows how to target, athletes, and he knows how to develop players. And I think just about every person you talk to, or that knows something about Matt Rhule, they talk about the kind of person that he is, the kind of leader that he is, the kind of culture that he builds. Those are all things that I feel like that Trev Alberts has talked about. And I know he struggled in the NFL, but some guys do. Steve Spurrier did, Nick Saban did, Urban Meyer, and Spurrier and Nick Saban both came back to college and were spectacular. Bobby Petrino went to the NFL and failed and came back to college and did well. So I would love Matt Rhule, but do you buy any of that smoke?
I'm not buying anything until I see the head coach being announced at the press conference, because honestly, there's been tons of names thrown around, and I would like Matt Rhule. I mean, I know I've said it 75,000 times. Anybody but Bill O'Brien, and I'm good to go. But
Yeah,
don't
want him.
I just hope it's announced soon so we can start building the program. Kind of get some last minute recruits before early signing day, and then because we have a lot of work to do, and it's not going to be an easy road, and I just hope we make the right decision here and don't mess this up because, and I've said this a million times too, but it's worth repeating again. If Trev messes this up, he's gone within the next couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. What'll happen is if Trev messes this up, is that like 3 years down the road, if it's still not going the way that it's supposed to, he'll get fired in like October, November, and then 2 weeks later, the head coach will get fired, and then they'll hire somebody else to hire a new head coach. That's what'll happen. And Trev Alberts, he's smart enough to know that. And it's like Mark Whipple, he said, look, if we don't win enough games here, we don't win the Big Ten West, we're going to get fired. You're right, Mark. You're getting fired. Like, absolutely. And if there's anybody on the staff that should be getting fired, it's you. I hope that you didn't get hurt too bad, but you did a terrible job this season. And that was the worst hire, honestly. I mean, if you really look back, the really bad decisions were hiring Whipple and keeping Shenander. If those two things hadn't happened, and if maybe Scott had not decided to do, I was thinking about this the other day. What if Scott had not decided to do that onside kick? Where would we be? Would we still be? Yeah, it feels like, things could have been different this season if maybe our old head coach wasn't such an idiot and we should have just won that first game. But I don't know.
I don't think we would have gotten anything resembling to winning with that defense, honestly. I mean, you can't give up, what was it, 30 points a game and expect to win. So I think it might have stopped the bleeding if we didn't do the onside kick against Northwestern, and we probably would have won the game. But I don't think it would have been anything to, carry over the entire season. You know what I mean? Like, that defense was still an issue, a major, major issue.
Yeah, keeping Shenander was a huge, huge mistake. So, I guess it's a bummer because there was so much hope going into the season, and now we're sitting here at 3-7, and this might be the worst season I've ever experienced as a Nebraska fan. I mean, going 3.5 games or whatever, and they can't even move the football. It's just
With
just
the talent
brutal.
that we have. Well, in theory, we had Casey Thompson, Trey Palmer, Anthony Grant, and we can't even.
And what's happened to Trey Palmer? He can't even catch the ball now.
I know he's been struggling the past couple games. I remember in the Minnesota game when Smothers on that last drive threw a pass at him right in the hands, and now he's
got to
struggling.
catch that ball too.
Must be that cold weather for the Louisiana boy. I don't know, but
I don't know, but it makes me think. It's his draft stock has definitely had to have taken a hit.
So maybe he'll come back. Maybe he'll come back. Fingers crossed.
I mean, here's the thing: is if you could. The thing about college sports with NIL is that if you're smart about it, Nebraska could approach Trey Palmer with an NIL deal for like $500,000. You know what I'm saying? And get him to hey, come back here and prove your draft stock, and you can still make like $500,000. I mean, that's what all those NBA, the guy from North Carolina and like Hunter Dickinson in Michigan. So that's what those, because they weren't going to be high draft picks in the NBA. So they figured, well, I can make almost as much on NIL and try to improve my draft stock. So I'll come back. So I'm hoping that, they could do that with Trey Palmer or with Anthony Grant or maybe even Casey Thompson. Cause I don't think any of those guys are going anywhere early in the NFL draft. I think they'd be lucky even to get picked. But so I don't know. I think that would be a good spot to get a head coach, and then they can try to start recruiting those guys, because I mean, that's really what you got to. I think you can even see with Wisconsin. I mean, there's been talk about Braylon Allen and Michigan and other schools, and they had to talk. Jim Leonard had to talk about that kind of. Not that there's been tampering, but Braylon Allen is actually close friends with Donovan Edwards, and so there's been talk about him going to Michigan next year if Jim Leonard's not the coach.
That would be a big loss for Wisconsin.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to. It just shows that in this new era, you've always got to be, recruiting your own roster, and the sooner Nebraska has a head coach in place, the sooner that he's going to be able to start doing that, and going to, and not just that, but shoring up things with Malachi Coleman and Arnold Barnes and all these guys in the 2023 class that we really need to sign. So, I mean, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if it happened this week, but the only way it's going to happen this week is if it is Matt Rhule, because it's not going to be another sitting head coach getting hired. And that's not going to happen until after the Iowa game. And I feel like the Kansas State coach would be a great hire. I feel like, Kleiman, I feel like Leopold would be a great hire. I would be totally happy with Mark Stoops. I'd be happy with Rhule. The guys I really don't want, like you said, Bill O'Brien. I'm not a big fan of Dave Dorney, and I keep hearing his name. And they lost to a bad Boston College team on Saturday, and I think he'd be okay. I don't think he would be a terrible hire, but I just I would rather somebody else. And Dave Aranda would be on my Lane Kiffin has always been on my list, but I don't think that that's very realistic. So
Didn't they just beat Alabama this weekend?
they
Or did they
lost. They
lose?
lost. Yeah.
Yeah. They kept it close though. I mean, they were up, I believe, at half. So
Yeah, they had they had two 10-point leads and couldn't quite finish it.
I mean, maybe Kiffin wants to get out of Saban's shadow. I don't know. I mean, but
Maybe.
honestly, I don't see Kiffin coming here. I think it's probably going to be Matt Rhule or somebody, which I wouldn't mind. We just, hiring a head coach, as we saw, is I'd say it's a little bit less of the equation. It's hiring good assistants who can recruit and coach the positions well. That can literally make or deal a program. I mean, look at Frost, like you said earlier. He doesn't hire or bring back Shenander. We might be talking about things a little bit differently. He doesn't hire his close friends. We might be talking things a little bit differently, maybe not, but it's hiring those assistants are equally as important as well. I mean, I'd almost go as far to say it's even more important than hiring, not more important than hiring a head coach, but it has a little bit more weight to it, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think it just means you have to get the right head coach who can make those hires. I mean, if you look at, like, let's talk about Jim Harbaugh, because if he doesn't turn over his staff and hire the right defensive coordinator, I mean, he was 2-4 after 2020. He was about to get fired, and he fired his defensive coordinator, and he hired a guy from that went back to the NFL. He hired a good defensive coordinator. He, kind of revamped his offense, but he totally revamped his coaching staff. And now he's won 22 out of his last 24 games. And he was literally right on the chopping block. So, I mean, it's not like he forgot how to coach or anything, but he just needed some different guys to recruit, a different scheme. And Michigan went from the Don Brown, like, blitz everybody scheme to, an NFL caliber scheme from the Ravens. And now they went from they couldn't stop anybody to now they're one of the best defenses in the country. And I mean, literally, it was a lot of from 2020, a lot of those same guys were like Aiden Hutchinson played on that team. I mean, he got hurt, but they were like 2-3 with him, and a lot of the other guys too. They had Kwity Paye, they had multiple first-round picks. Daxon Hill, Michigan literally had 3 first-round picks on its defense, and they gave up like 42 points to Indiana. And then you go the very next year with a different coach, and they're one of the best defenses in the country. So coaching matters a hell of a lot. And it's not just the head coach can't do it alone. He's got to build a staff. And that's, again, why I think that Matt Rhule would be a great coach. When you look at, maybe he could bring in like a Joe Brady, or I don't know exactly how it would work, but I feel like he would be able to build a really good staff here at Nebraska. And you absolutely, hit it on the head from offensive line, defensive line. Like, you've got to get it right on these hires. You've got to get this offensive line hire right, because Nebraska, I think this was Sipple who wrote this, but they've had one all Big Ten offensive lineman in like the last 10 years. One. That's pathetic. Like, it's just mind boggling.
Yeah. And, it's really kind of, I wonder what Anthony Grant would have been able to have done with a good offensive line. I'm surprised he did as much as he did this season with the line.
Yeah, 500 yards. I mean, I think he's close to 1,000 yards, but he's got 5 100-yard games this year, and 4 of them are in Big Ten play.
Yeah, no, I mean he's played really well, all things considered, and and it's not just about the running game either. It's about protecting the quarterback. I mean, we're seeing it now. Casey Thompson's hurt. I mean, Logan Smothers is banged up. Chuba Purdy left the game. I mean, not because of the line.
Mark Whipple left the game.
Mark Whipple left the game, but in all seriousness, like, I don't care if you're Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes or whatever. You can't do anything with a bad offensive line, and they really need to address that, because if the line can get addressed, we may see a better offense. And I don't know how the development of the in-state kids, Corcoran and I'm blanking on some of the names because it's early in the morning, but those guys were very highly rated in the 2019 class, and the development just never materialized. So they need to get somebody that knows how to not only develop but coach as well.
Well, and this idea that Nebraska can't recruit, I don't have the exact numbers, but I've seen this before, and I saw this on Twitter yesterday, and it was the last their rank among Big Ten recruiting classes every year of the Frost era, and every year they ranked in the top 5 of the Big Ten, and that's usually it's going to be Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. You know what I mean? But Nebraska's right in there behind them, and they just haven't been able to do anything with that talent. I mean, objectively, this program has had as much recruiting talent as Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, blah blah blah. I do think that, development, and I think the other thing too is I think that the recruiting rankings, I don't think are as good as they used to be because I do, somebody made this point that they're not investing as much in scouting players, and I agree with that. They're not. They're more about interviewing players and trying to get the scoop, and you just don't see them get out and because there's guys that are like ranked in the 800s that you're like, what are you guys thinking? I was like Xavier Worthy I talked about a couple of weeks ago. He was ranked like in the 800s for like almost the entire 2021 class until like and then he moved up to like 67th overall. It was like, yeah, you just didn't scout him. You didn't take the time to scout the kid, and that's why he was ranked where he was. And until like Michigan and Alabama offered him, he was ranked super. If they would have never offered him, his ranking wouldn't have jumped up. So you can't always trust the recruiting rankings, and I think we've seen that with Nebraska. But at the same time, these are 18-year-old kids, so you're making a projection, and you as a coach have to be able to develop that talent. And Nebraska just was not able to do that, and that's been one of their biggest failures. I think that's why Trev Alberts said that this program needs to become the premier development program in college football, and I think that that's the right line of thinking. And you just have to find the coach to do that. I don't know if that's Matt Rhule or I don't know. And it seems like I feel like Trev has kind of zeroed in on his guy. I don't know who it is, but I feel like Trev Alberts at this point has a pretty good idea who he's going to hire. We just don't know who it is yet.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a guy that we haven't even heard of in regards to this coaching search. I wouldn't be surprised if he's just kept this thing close to the vest, and all these rumors are just that, and we get a guy that hasn't even been really talked about a lot. That wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, and it happened. I don't want to bring up bad feelings, but it did happen with Mike Riley. I mean, nobody expected Mike Riley to be that higher, and then I can't even remember the AD's name at this point. I don't want to remember, but they announced him.
No,
I don't. Maybe might have been him, but that was his surprise hire. That was his guy. Now look, he was totally wrong, but that happened quickly. I mean, but it was a horrible decision. I mean, hopefully Trev doesn't make. But just because we haven't heard about it doesn't mean that there's not something going on in the background.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I really am starting to like the idea of the Kansas State head coach, but
I mean, I've liked the ideas of about 9 different coaches now, so I'm just going to wait and not get my hopes up. But even more like, for a more recent example, Lincoln Riley. I mean, nobody, that was kind of out of the blue, and now he's put USC in a very good position, so you just never know. I mean, maybe Trev has his guy already, or maybe he's still looking. I highly doubt that he's still looking, because I think he knows what's at stake with the early signing day and things like that. But I'm just ready for this season to end and for us to kind of figure out the coach, kind of rebuild, and get ready for 2023. And we do have 2 more games here. I think it's Wisconsin at noon my time. What is it, 10 your time?
Yeah.
I mean,
Nebraska's
I don't know if I'm gonna watch,
opening is I'm going to watch, but yeah, I hope to God Casey plays, because if not, it's going to be just a bloodbath. Probably they're a 13-point underdog. Yeah, I mean, Chuba showed some good things the last couple of, but he's not consistent. So I mean, I don't think there's any chance in hell they can win without Casey. I just really don't.
And you think all 3 quarterbacks are injured now, so we're not even getting 100% of a quarterback now. So I mean, I don't know. Just maybe run the ball, do like waste clock. I don't know. Keys to the game. Just don't throw the football. That's my key to the game.
That oh man, it's gonna. And Wisconsin's not a great offense either. So I mean, that could be a game where like there's less than like 400 yards of total offense. I mean, really, it could really be just. I mean, talk about old school football. It could be like. I mean, maybe the press or maybe the spread people are thinking like Wisconsin's going to win like 17-3. I don't know where, 13 nothing. I don't know. It's not going to be pretty.
Because after Saturday's showing, I would assume that Wisconsin would be like 40-point favorites. Ugh.
But well, they lost to Iowa 24-10 on Saturday, and they literally had, I think, like less than 200 yards of offense. So it was.
I meant our
a,
showing, but yeah, I mean,
it was a brutal game. Well, I read somewhere that so Iowa and Wisconsin both punted like 10 times or something, and Iowa, the net punting average was like 10 or 15 yards difference. So that was like the biggest difference in the game was Iowa's special teams punting unit. Like it just
Big
was
Ten
like,
football, baby.
Yeah. But freaking so the Big Ten West, I mean, Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue, and Illinois all have a chance at 4-3. Nobody controls their own destiny right now in the Big Ten West. Nobody. That's how crazy it is. And we're sitting there at 2-5, and I'm like, man, if we had beat North, I mean, we really could have won the Big Ten West this year if we had a decent offensive line and a better
Ty
head coach.
Robinson made that tackle against Purdue. We would have been talking about maybe sneaking in there, but we control our own destiny down to the bottom of the Big Ten West, and now we can be destined to find a new head coach. I'm just so done with this season. I mean, it had such promise. Trey Palmer, Casey Thompson, everybody was excited. This was the year, and
yeah, I mean, and I feel that way too. But I'll say this: I want to see the seniors win their last home game. I mean, that's you always want to win the last home game, and especially there's a lot of guys that aren't going to be back, and so I'd like to see that happen. And then of course, no matter what the record, I would like to beat Iowa for freaking once. I mean, that would be an awesome way to send off Mickey Joseph at least to get him a win over Iowa. So I mean, not like I'll watch the last two games, but if Casey's not playing, it's going to be brutal. But hopefully, I think he might try if he's healthy because I don't know if he wants to stick around for another year if he's trying to get more tape for the NFL. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, but I've been wrong before, so nobody probably thought Ryan Fitzpatrick was either. So
Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Harvard stud up here in Massachusetts, but no. I mean, I don't think Casey's an NFL quarterback yet either. I mean, I hope he comes back because I'd love to see what he would be able to do with a hopefully revamped offensive line. I mean, a good year next year could really kind of boost his draft stock, and because I don't think all of his mistakes this year were his fault, as crazy as it is to say. But I mean, I don't know. It just impresses me that we're talking about next year already with no bowl game. Like we're kind of limping into these final two games. Like, am I going to be in a retirement home before we make another bowl game?
Yeah, God, I hope not.
I hope not.
Somebody put out the expectations, or like my expectations are a losing season next year with a new head coach. Like my expectation is the new coach gets us to 6-6. It's not that hard. I mean, like with you're basically always guaranteed like 2 wins in non-conference play. So all you have to do is go like 4-5 in the Big Ten. Like it's not that tough. We should be able to get to a bowl game next year.
That person acts as if like a losing season with a new head coach would be anything different from what we've had the past, 5 years?
Yeah, 5 straight. Yeah.
Feels like 55, but
I think we're the only team in the FBS that hasn't made a bowl game now since 2017.
Yeah, because UConn made a bowl game this year, and UConn was awful. UConn was awful, but credit to them, they made a bowl game this year.
And they beat some solid. I mean, they got smoked the first few games, but they just beat a pretty solid Liberty team coached by Hugh Freeze. And then didn't they beat Boston College too?
They did.
So
Boston College sucks. They're awful. I don't know how they beat NC State. I really don't know how. I really don't know.
But that shows because that program people were saying outside of UMass, which sorry to harp on, but
we're a hockey state up here, college hockey up here. Yeah. All the rest is like iffy.
But people were basically saying like UMass and UConn were like the worst programs in college football because UConn had that whole thing where they were leaving the Big East and then they got stuck without a conference and it was just absolutely terrible. And they brought in Jim Mora and boom, right away 6 wins. So I mean, it can happen quickly if you get somebody in there that is competent and knows what they're doing and can build a good staff. I mean, he was a former NFL head coach, so that probably helped him, put together a staff there. And hopefully Nebraska can do the same thing because I can't take many more scenes of this. It's just been terrible.
You know who's close to 6 wins? the Nebraska men's basketball team. That's who.
Yeah.
They have 2 wins right now. I believe they won the last time. Uh, we filmed on Wednesday, so they picked up another win on Thursday.
Yep.
And
Beat Nebraska, Omaha.
I mean, a win's a win at this point. I mean, get as many wins as you can in non-conference play because that conference schedule does you no favors. That being said, I see things that I really like about this team, and I do think they can be competitive. You know, time will tell, but I think this is one of Fred's more balanced rosters that he has had since he's been here. Granted, he's had like 36 different rosters, and I think this may be the one that's most balanced. But I mean, they've been fun to follow the highlights of because I can't watch, but they've been fun. They've been fun to follow, and I have hopes for them. I'm not going to say they're going to be Big Ten conference champions or whatever, but they could be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think he has put together a roster that, has a lot of nice pieces to it. I think he just learned that, winning in the it's like Mickey has said, winning in the Big Ten is hard to do. And I don't care if it's basketball or football. I mean, this league is loaded in basketball, and you can't, as talented as Bryce McGowan's is, he's not an effective Big Ten player as a freshman. There are very few players that come in as a freshman and play well because look, yeah, could he score a bunch of points? Yeah. Could he defend anybody? No, absolutely not. And neither could his brother. And that's why they lost a bunch of games last year is because they couldn't defend anybody. And the difference between, defending somebody in high school and college is like a totally different thing because in high school, there's players that, you don't need to close out on that hard. If you get half a hand up, they're going to brick the shot because they're not very good. But in the Big Ten, if you don't have a hand up on the guy, he's going to make a three right in your face almost every single time. Like that's just the difference between high school and college, or those little things that you have to learn. And so I feel like those little things really hurt Nebraska last year. Not this team, you've got a bunch of veterans, Greasel, Gary, a lot of these other transfers have kind of come in and I think solidified this roster. Derek Walker doesn't sound like he's going to be able to play till next month. So that's not great news, but I thought we saw some good things on the, in the low post area against Omaha. I do think that the shooting needs to get a little bit better, and they shot the 3-ball better in this last game. The free throw shooting was down a little bit, but, I think the offense is still just kind of, finding those parts together, but defensively, they're doing a pretty good job, and they're holding people to, under a point per possession. They're at 0.92 points per possession, which is a pretty, if you're under a point per possession, you're doing a pretty good job. And, we're going to find out a lot about this team, I think, on Thursday against St. John's.
And you look, from the Omaha game statistics, Denham Dawson had 8 points off the bench as a freshman. So it's encouraging to see some of the freshman guys really, make an impact. I mean, I know last year with Bredenbach, we had the injury, and he was a highly touted freshman, and he didn't make as big of an impact as we would have liked to have seen because of the injury. So it's good to see a guy like Dawson. Like I said, 8 points on Thursday. They're going to need all that depth as the schedule gets tougher. And, it's always the same guys on the stat sheet, right? It's always, Bandamel and, Greasel. And to start the year, CJ Wilcher has struggled to find his shot, but he did much better against Omaha on Thursday. He had 21 points, and he went 8 of 12 from the field, 4 of 7 from behind the arc. So he did it relatively efficiently as well, and it was a good effort on Thursday, I thought. I mean, yes, it is Omaha, but a win's a win, and it was good to see some really encouraging signs.
Yeah, when CJ Wilcher, was hitting the 3-ball, that's going to be a big part of it. We saw Kasai do that in the first game. He didn't really follow it up with a big night in the second one, but that's going to happen. You're going to have guys that are a little bit streaky as long as you have somebody who's kind of hitting shots for you. Gary, I think, can shoot the ball better than he has, to start. He's only actually shooting, let's see here, 29% overall. He's at 25% from 3. So he really hasn't shot the ball well. I think, that'll sort itself out. Griesel's done a nice job, but he's also shooting just 20% from 3. So, some of the shots, aren't quite falling like they will eventually. But it'll be interesting to see on the defensive side and in the middle of the, protecting the rim, because that's been, an issue for this team is rim protection. And we'll see how, that type of stuff doesn't hurt you as much against, mid-major programs because they don't have those big guys, in the Big Ten, that is going to hurt you. So, I mean, they definitely need to get Derek Walker back. And, Blaze Keita, I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, the junior college kid, but I thought he played pretty well the other night. He had 12 points, and he did a nice job of getting himself inside and finishing, did a good job on the boards, had a block shot. So they're really going to need him to step up. And I think it's because of his defense that, we're seeing him kind of play over Wilhelm. And, Wilhelm, I thought the first game I was impressed with his ability. In the game against Omaha, I really thought that he could be a guy that they could attack in the low post and he could get some points. I don't think he scored. So, he needs to be a little bit more consistent because on just a pure talent basis, he's a guy that should be able to, score double figures almost every single game.
I think it's going to take a little bit, though, because he's working his way back from injury. But Keita, 10 rebounds, that was great to see. And we're going to need that rebounding ability in Big Ten play. And even last year, I thought we gave up a lot of second chance points. So I'd love to see, 10 rebound games from guys every single night, because that's also what you need in Big Ten play and overall, just in general. In the game of college basketball, you need to be able to rebound the basketball. And, maybe that's something, we've seen them focus on. Adam Howard was brought in to be a defensive assistant coach. And, we're seeing a little bit better work on the boards. So, I mean, maybe he's leaving his imprint on the team this early.
Yeah, and I think just having a bigger, Griesel's, he's a pretty big point guard, Gary. So, I mean, I feel like having just a little bit of a bigger lineup. And so far it's been, they've got, they're averaging 12 offensive rebounds through 2 games. They're only giving up 7 offensive boards. So they have a 39-31 rebounding advantage, which you would expect over a mid-major team. You need to translate that over. But to me, I feel like as long as Nebraska can just be even, if they can just not get killed on the boards, that's the main thing. They're not going to win, a ton of rebounding battles, but if they can just limit the second chance points for other teams, I think that's going to be, the biggest thing for them going forward.
Well, you look at these games as games that you can start good habits and then have them solidified by Big Ten play. And, rebounding is, one of those things that can really, if you build good habits in terms of rebounding, then that sets you up nicely. If you, can get contributions from everybody, or at least have 2 or 3 guys that can score consistently, that sets you up nicely for the tougher games. So, you use these kind of earlier games to form habits, form good habits, hopefully. And, we're starting to see that here with Nebraska basketball. They're forming some really good habits and getting good production in other places. Time will tell if all of these things will be as effective in Big Ten play, but it's good to see, some of these things start to assert themselves early.
Yeah, and it's important because, man, I'm looking at the schedule and it's not easy for Nebraska. I mean, so you've got St. John's Thursday night on the road, and then you come back home for Arkansas Pine Bluff on Sunday, which is another game that's not on Big Ten Plus, which is super annoying. I hate it. But then you've got a tough stretch of games. You play Oklahoma on Thanksgiving Day. Then and that's part of a tournament, so you could play some other games during that stretch too. Then you've got the next week you got Boston College, coming to.
That's a win.
I mean, maybe, but still, they should be able to win that at home. But
yeah,
and then at Creighton, which is always a nightmare. At Indiana,
they've struggled this year too, Creighton.
Yeah, I know.
So I don't know, but you never know. It's always a rivalry game, so you never know what can happen in those.
And then we play Queens NC, which I have no idea who the hell that is. That's on December 20th. But so basically, looking at the schedule, there's only two games on here that are against mid-major teams. So I mean, Nebraska seems like that's a really loaded Power 5 schedule. So I mean, they got to take advantage of all these wins, because I do think that it'd be nice to see this team compete for an NIT berth. I don't think this is going to be an NCAA tournament team. I'd love to be wrong on that, but I do think that they could find a way to be an NIT team, or even if they went to the freaking college basketball invitational, any type of postseason basketball would be good. And if they could somehow avoid the first day at the Big Ten tournament, I think that would be a major achievement, but you have to finish 10th to get there. And that's not easy. I mean, because you look at, Northwestern, I mean, even the bad teams in the Big Ten can beat you. That's the thing. Northwestern, Penn State are some of the worst teams. Rutgers has been one of the worst teams, and now they're becoming one of the best. So it's like, as hard as the Big Ten is in football, I would say it's even harder in basketball because there's just no gimme games in this league. There's none.
Yeah, and it makes for fun Saturdays to watch basketball games because you're always gonna have some good competition. But I mean, not that we have to travel too far down this rabbit hole, but what would you say would be a barometer for Fred to keep his job this year? I'm thinking it's an NIT berth, and I know that may be a little high, but at some point, and I know he's had all sorts of rosters, and I've said that myself, but at some point, I kind of want to see some life out of this program. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I don't know if he has to get to an NIT berth, but I think he has to show I think my barometer with Fred is more Big Ten games. So last year they were 4-16. The year before 3-16. The year before that 2-8. So I think he's got to almost double that. I think he's got to get to 8-12 in the Big Ten, which it sounds like more wins, but I mean, if you think about it, 10 of those games are at home, right? So I mean, even if you just go say 6-4 at home, all you got to do is then go 2-8 on the road. So you've got to be able to beat somebody on the road eventually, or go 8-2 at home. I mean, when Tim Miles was here, he won a lot of games at Pinnacle Bank Arena, and that's why Nebraska was constantly in the NIT and stuff, because even when there was really good teams in the Big Ten, they didn't, the better teams won at Pinnacle Bank, but not everybody. And so that's what Fred first, I think, needs to get changed. So, I think he's got to get at least 7-8 Big Ten wins. Otherwise, if they go like 4-16, I think he's done.
I mean, it's really kind of staggering the records that you just mentioned in Big Ten play. That is improvement technically, if only by one win. But
Yeah.
man, those are very, very similar. And I agree. I think there needs to be some sort of improvement, or else Trevor will have to do the same thing he's doing in football with the basketball program, and we're going to be sitting here in I don't know, April, talking about basketball head coaching candidates. But
then we're going to be watching March Madness, trying to say, "Oh, this guy's going to be the next."
Yeah. And honestly,
steal them from one of those Cinderella programs.
we're gonna use the airplane trackers to track every head coach's flight.
No more. I just want to freaking hire, man. I just want to get to the next point with the football team, but hopefully basketball will give us. The women's team is 2-0. They're ranked in the top 25. Volleyball lost a big match to Ohio State last night, so that was kind of another kick in the groin. So,
and we also have baseball when the time comes to fill our football void. I mean, in baseball, I believe, was a big disappointment last season. So
they've been getting a little bit better, but yeah, last year was a weird year in the Big Ten. It was kind of Nebraska. I think they ended up. I want to say that they made the Big Ten championship game, but then they lost. I think that they lost to Michigan. I know Michigan won it.
Why is Michigan good at everything?
I don't know, man. That's a good question.
Hockey, they're nasty. Basketball, they're really good. Football, they're good.
They're not. Nebraska's got the edge in wrestling though, and volleyball. So
they do.
I saw Nebraska wrestling was, I think, 1-1 in some duels over the weekend. I'm not sure. I have to follow them more closely, but I know I did see that they won one and lost one. So
they need Tyson Terry.
Yeah,
that's what they need. No, I'm just looking up the baseball schedule right now, and I'm actually looking at just this year's. Let's see. Let's fast forward to this year's baseball for a second. 2023. Oh, they played 2 exhibition games so far this year, against Omaha on September 24th and against Kansas on October 15th, and they won 9-1 and 12-9. I remember pitching was the issue last year. Offense wasn't the problem. It was the pitching that really kind of let the program down.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's been a while since they've been in the NCAA tournament, so it'd be nice to get back there, because the baseball program used to kind of be not as good as volleyball, but it was pretty solid for a long time.
And I think Will Bolt can get them back there, because don't they have a very good recruiting class coming in this year?
Yeah, they've got a lot of quality guys, and I think they've done a good job of trying to add some pitchers. So, we'll see how it all works out.
I feel like that statement that used to be good, hopefully they can get back there, could be used for about, I don't know, 80% of the men's programs, and then the women's sports are doing all right. So I mean, I can't complain there.
Yeah, I think the women's team is going to be one of the better ones in the Big Ten. So definitely follow the women's college basketball as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting this week. We'll see, in these next couple of days if there's any truth to this Matt Rhule smoke. I'm guessing there's not, but I would be man, if they announce Matt Rhule today, I'd be happy just to at least know who the next head coach is. That's my biggest thing. I just want to know. Just tell me,
Yeah,
Trev. You don't have to
yeah.
tell anybody else. Just DM me. It's fine. I'll keep your secret.
I wouldn't be shocked at all if they announced something this week, just because they need to get the ball rolling in terms of recruiting. I'm not
Yeah.
expecting it, but you never know. I mean, things move fast in college football. I mean, and I know we've referenced this before, but it's worth repeating. Look at what Miami did in terms of announcing Mario Cristobal. Fired Manny Diaz the day after the game. Next thing you know, Mario's on a plane to Miami. They announce him as head coach. So things move fast in the college football world, especially with the transfer portal and even the NIL deals now. They play a factor into that as well. So you
Yep.
never know. I'm just hoping, like, I don't know. I just kind of want to move on to 2023 for football. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the good thing is that we play in August to open up the season next year, so we won't have to wait as long, and we'll have a Minnesota team that is without Mo Ibrahim and no Tanner Morgan. So I don't know. Maybe brighter days are ahead. I feel like I say that all the time, but whatever.
I mean, what do they say that the night is always darkest before the dawn, or whatever that saying is? Maybe
Well, it
that's
feels like we've been dark for like 7 years.
we have been dark for
Mhm.
7 years. So hopefully the new coach will bring us some light, and hopefully this basketball team will get us a win on Thursday. So we'll have another video again this week. If anything happens with the head coaching search, we'll be here with some instant reactions, and we'll preview the Wisconsin game this Saturday, and we'll
No more
also.
Illinois, please.
Yeah, no more Illinois. And then we'll talk about a little more about that St. John's game. And, we'll make sure that you're checking out our sites here, huskerbigred.com and greatcornholio.org for all your Nebraska content. Also, make sure that you're liking this video, get into the comments section, subscribe, tell your other Nebraska fans if you like this podcast stream that we have going. So, we appreciate everybody's support and your interaction with us. And, hang in there, guys. It's going to get better.
It's
So,
gonna get better.
yeah, as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.